there was a thing in 2018 where Amazon had an internal project to use machine learning to filter resumes, CVs, because obviously they're hiring at huge scale. And what they find is that historically they mostly hired men. And so the pattern of a successful candidate is a man. And meanwhile, it's not that it was looking at gender equals male in a database. It was looking at like what sports people played and even more subtle things like, you know, what language people would be using to describe their accomplishments. And it doesn't have a model of male and female. It just has a model of all of the people we hired played football and none of them played lacrosse. So I'm stereotyping. In Britain, lacrosse is a girl's sport. In America, maybe it's a boy's sport. I don't know. But
it is more so.
Yeah, but you get the point.
Yeah.
We tended to hire people who used more direct affirmative language in describing their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
It's doesn't have a concept of man or woman. It's just doing pattern matching.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy here I really like is so there's a dumb, naive reaction to this, which is to say like mass is mass, it can't be biased. If you think yes, but what's the training data can be biased? What data have you put into it? The equally dumb, naive reaction is to say this is because your hiring teams and your engineers are all white men who live in the valley and they haven't looked at this stuff. And this is true, but only in a very limited sense. And the reason it's true in a limited sense is there was another really interesting thing that came out, a machine learning bias issue, again, like 5-6 years ago, which was someone was building a skin cancer recognizing system. And so the obvious way you can screw this up is clearly there's no different, it's not seeing man or woman, but you could have different skin tones. So if you don't have the like good distributions of skin tones, you might get false positives and false negatives from people that are in a kind of a smaller group. However, the problem that actually came up was that dermatologists tend to put a photo of a ruler in the picture of the skin cancer. And so if your pictures of skin cancer have a ruler and your pictures for your sample set of healthy skin don't, then guess what? What's the most statistically obvious difference between the two sample sets? It's not the shape of the little blemish on the skin, it's the giant great ruler. Push this a little further. Imagine if your pictures of healthy skin are taken under incandescent light and your pictures of unhealthy skin are taken under fluorescent light. Imagine if mostly use Samsung cameras for this and mostly Sony cameras for that. You're not even going to be able to see that. And so hiring more black people or more women, yes, you should, but like that's not what the issue is. That's not where the bias is coming from. The bias is coming from the stuff in the data that you didn't know was the stuff in the data. And so there's an interesting turn on this, however, which is that DeepMind did a project with Moorfields, which is eye hospital in the UK, and they were looking at retinas, and their system discovered a difference between male and female retinas, and apparently medical science didn't actually know there was a difference between male and female retinas. And so part of what you're seeing is, if you kind of systematize this, your machine learning system will use the patterns in the data. Those patterns might be things that shouldn't be there. They might be things that are there but don't reflect society, like the ruler. They might be things that are there and do reflect society, but you don't want to use them, like you only hire men. They might be things that are there and do reflect something that you didn't know and would like to know, like there's a male-female correlation in this data that you weren't aware was there. One of the ways I used to talk about machine learning is that it gives you infinite interns. Like you would like someone to listen to every call coming into the call center and tell me if the customer is angry. Like you've got 1 million calls a day. You don't have enough interns. But there's also, what if you had one intern who's infinitely fast? As one intern could listen to every call coming into the call center and say, do you know, when I heard the 3rd billionth phone call, I noticed this interesting pattern. And that's obviously what a lot of the medical research point is, that it's finding patterns in the data that you didn't know were there, as opposed to look at the X-ray and save time from a human radiologist. So the kind of the point of all of this is like you've got these what machine learning systems are doing is seeing patterns in the data. Some of those are patterns that reflect what you want. Some of them are not. What does that mean? Where is that useful, not useful, helpful, not helpful? There's another, I'm tending to monologue here, but there's kind of another interesting, important point here. which in fact, this is probably the one thing anyone listening to this should take away. So don't edit it out. So do you know about the post office scandal in the UK?
I don't.
Okay. So in the UK, most of the post office is a sort of franchise system. So the individual branches are owned by independent small business people. Like it's the bodega, it's the local pharmacy has a post office counter. And so the post office rolls out a new point of sale computing system built for them by Fujitsu. The system has bugs. It starts showing shortfalls in cash, like big shortfalls. Like this person paid us 5, 10, 20 grand less than our system says they should have paid us. And they think, okay, these people have been robbing us for years. Now we've got them. There are prosecutions. Maybe 1,000 people are prosecuted. Maybe 100 people go to prison. There are suicides, bankruptcies, people lose their homes. Meanwhile, Fujitsu and the post office know there are bugs in the system. And so they are prosecuting people and going to court on oath saying there's no errors in the system. The court's accepting this. And at a certain point, and this is now becomes a legal question, at what point does this go from a sort of institutional blindness that they know there are bugs and kind of don't accept it to it's actually like criminal conspiracy territory in that they're kind of hushing it up. But the point of this is
and what happened?
There's now a public inquiry going on. So I don't know what the American equivalent would be, but like there's a debate about how much compensation, how many convictions get overturned, and so on. So this has become a huge scandal. And the point is, this is 1970s technology. This is databases. This is Fujitsu. It's not Google or DeepMind or someone or OpenAI. And you don't look at this and say, well, obviously the solution is that we need to have a database regulator that makes sure databases don't have bugs. Rather, you look at it and say, well, this is an institutional failure, A, in Fujitsu in the post office, and B, in the legal system, not properly testing the evidence. And the same thing with AI bias. Like, you have these people talking about this stuff as though, like, we need to have like a code of ethics so that people will make sure that there's no bias in their database system. Like, can I swear on this podcast? Like, the fuck are you talking about? You're going to get people to commit that there's no mistakes in the code. Do you have any idea? Do you not know anything about the software industry? The correct answer is to yes, you have to train people to be aware that this can happen, just as they need to be aware of how bugs happen, like buffer overflows and SQL injection, all the other ways that you can screw up software. This creates like a whole other class of ways that you can screw up your software, and people will do it. What you need then is to have the broader awareness from everybody that computers can be wrong. This is another way that computers can be wrong, and do you have the processes to deal with it? Because you will do this, just as you will have more of these post office scandals.